Robert Kraychik here in Ottawa, Ontario, reporting for Rebel News. At the conclusion of day 33 of the trial of Chris Barber and Tamara Lich, the two are being charged with a series of crimes related to their roles as organizers in the 2022 Freedom Convoy, a massive peaceful demonstration here in downtown Ottawa, broadly opposed to what I regularly refer to as the COVID-19 enterprise. You all remember what that was. Governmentally issued edicts, decrees, mandates, and lockdowns ostensibly in the purposes of so-called public health to reduce the transmission of COVID-19. Now, I was fortunate enough to speak with Eric Granger and Lawrence Greenspan, two of Tamara Lich's defense attorneys, about the day's proceedings and some things coming ahead. And I'll share that with you folks in a moment. Just want to remind you that we need your financial support to produce this in the field journalism, and that keeps us accountable to you, our dear audience. So please visit tamaratrial.com, help us out as you can, and stay up to date with our ongoing coverage. Today's proceedings were much shorter than usual, only about 1 hour. That's all that was scheduled. And the time was entirely dedicated to Diane Megas, Chris Barber's defense attorney, in which she was concluding her arguments in requesting the judge dismiss the prosecution's Carter application. For those of you that don't yet know what a Carter application is, please check out our earlier video reports from days 30, 31, and 32, where we explain what this entails. Since the day's proceedings were so short and there was a break in the trial's proceedings beginning last Friday, Tamara Lich joined via Zoom. She's back home in Alberta. Chris Barber was still around for his own reasons. And the next date is scheduled for January 4th. And even that date will simply be a sort of logistical preparation for future dates. So after today, there's a pretty significant hiatus in this trial. I'm here with Lawrence Greenspan, defense attorney for Tamara Lich, and I wanted to ask you something that's on the minds of a lot of our audience. A lot of remarks from our audience in terms of comments on our videos and so forth are in relation to what they speculate is a massive investment of resources in the context of this trial out of the public purse. So you've been a lawyer for a while, and I'm wondering if you can share with our audience any changes you've seen over time in terms of the average amount of time it takes to schedule a trial, to complete a trial. Is there a greater disparity between the demand and the availability of court resources to actually engage in justice than it was, let's say, a year ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been a lawyer for a number of years, and what's happened over time is that cases have become more complex and, as a result, much longer. Way back when, a murder trial was done in a couple of weeks. This is a case that's been going on now. We're just done day 33 of essentially what is a mischief and other related charges. As the law has become more complex, we've seen a substantial lengthening of the amount of time that cases take to proceed through the courts. The result of that is that there's all kinds of concerns about unreasonable delay. And as you know, under the Charter, people have a right to be tried within a reasonable time. And that's being jeopardized, as we found from the Supreme Court of Canada. That's being jeopardized as a result, at least in part, of the lengthening of trials.
I've got two questions for you based on outstanding events in the trial. One is whether or not you have an expectation as to a time frame upon which Justice Heather Perkins McVeigh will make a decision, render her judgment over this request from you guys to dismiss this Carter application.
We don't have a specific timeline. Obviously, as we heard from her in court, it's something that clearly she needs to put some thought into. She heard 5+ days of argument on it. So we expect it to be in January at some point, but we're still waiting on a date.
So I'm here with Alan from the Democracy Fund. Alan's been in proceedings today, but I have a meta question for Alan. And Alan, I want to know why this trial, why these proceedings are important to our audience, to Canadians writ large, what the issues at play are, and maybe you can just share some remarks with our audience about those broader themes.
Sure. Thanks very much, Robert. Well, I think Canadians care about this trial because the Freedom Convoy was obviously a huge event, right? Look, we're on day 33 of the trial right now. It's a trial of Tamara Lich, it's a trial of Chris Barber, but it's seen as being a trial of the Freedom Convoy. That might not be what it technically it is, but people see it that way. And so I think if Tamara Lich is, as the face of the convoy or the Freedom Convoy is acquitted, people who support her and supported the convoy will see that as vindication. And, the opposite will happen. If Tamara Lich is convicted, people who oppose the convoy will see that as their vindication.
So just to make sure I understand this, you mentioned that trials are becoming more complex. So you said that this is because the law itself is becoming more complex. Mm-hmm. So we're adding layers of law and regulation over time. Mm-hmm. Secondarily, what about just apportionment of resources? Do you think there's a lower ratio, for example, of judge to defendant or court clerk to defendant? Is the ratio of courtrooms to demand diminishing over time the same way we see in the healthcare system?
There's no question that the demand for justice has increased over time, and the resources that are afforded to the criminal justice system have been insufficient, and it's not getting any better. There's a shortage of judges, there's a shortage of crowns, defense counsel are woefully overworked and underpaid, and so there's not a huge attraction to become defense counsel, and it permeates the entire system. There's a shortage of resources that are allocated to the criminal justice system, and what you end up with are the kind of backlogs that lead in some cases to cases being thrown out.
But my sense of it, from a really large point of view, what I would like to see happen, what I think would be good for the country, actually, is for Tamara Lich to be acquitted. So if she's acquitted, people who supported her, people who supported the Freedom Convoy, who were, grieved by many of the things happening leading up to that event, will be vindicated, right? They'll experience that. And, Tamara's detractors will be able to say, well, but it's not exoneration exactly. It's just she raised a reasonable doubt. And I think if that happens, maybe everyone can move on. Nobody completely loses face. And, I hate to say something cheesy like this, but, maybe our country can start to heal.
I want to remind you folks in our dear audience again that we don't receive government funding like the usual suspects. We remain accountable to you via your donations to assist with our operations. So if you value this in the field journalism, please visit tamaratrial.com, help us out, and stay up to date with our ongoing reports.